Welcome to Story Planet, where stories unfold like quiet rain and every word leads you closer to peace. Tonight, let us guide you into a world of stillness, memory, and soft-hearted wonder. This is Rain on the Tin Roof. Make yourself comfortable, take a breath, and let the story begin.
It had been raining since late afternoon. Not a storm, not a downpour, just the kind of soft, whispering rain that makes you forget the world was ever loud. The tin roof of the old house welcomed every drop. Tap, 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 like a lullaby passed down through the years. Inside, everything slowed. Even the clock on the wall ticked a little gentler. The air felt still, like it had curled up under a blanket. Out on the porch, 3 generations sat together. Elsie, the grandmother, rocked slowly in her old chair. Her hands rested gently in her lap, and her eyes watched the horizon, as if the past might stroll up the road and sit a while. Marin, her daughter, held a warm mug of tea. She was quiet, thoughtful, wrapped in a patchwork quilt. The steam from her cup curled upward and vanished into the dusk. And June, just 13, sat cross-legged on the wooden floor. Her chin rested in her palms. Her eyes were wide and wondering, tracing patterns in the air with her thoughts. The porch light flickered softly. The breeze moved through the tall grass just beyond the steps. It brought with it the scent of wet earth, rosemary from the garden bed, and something older, like time itself. Then, in a voice barely louder than the rain, June asked, "Gran, why does it feel like the rain knows us?" Elsie smiled, the kind of smile that travels through time before reaching the lips, one that starts behind the eyes, takes its time, and settles gently on the face. "Well, now, that's a story," she said. Marin looked up and gave a small nod. "Just one, just enough." Elsie looked out at the sky, then took a breath. The kind of breath you take before reaching into a drawer of memories. This roof has heard more rain than most, you know. It's listened to storms and mist and every kind of drizzle in between. But the one I remember most is the very first. It was almost 45 years ago when your grandfather, Thomas, and I built this house, board by board, nail by nail, with more hope than tools. We were young, and the roof was the last thing to go up. The clouds came in just as we were finishing. Before we could hammer in the last sheet of tin, the rain began, and we were soaked. Mud on our boots, wet hair stuck to our faces. But our hands kept working, slipping on tools, laughing at how unprepared we were. But oh, how we laughed, because that rain, it felt like a blessing. We didn't run for cover. We stood there in the middle of it, boots sinking in clay, shoulders trembling with joy. That night, we slept on the floor. No windows yet, just a mattress and one little lamp. The room echoed with emptiness, but the rain filled it. The rain tapped gently on the roof, and it sounded like music, like peace itself, like the world was telling us, "You are home now." We held hands, and I remember thinking, this house would carry our stories, and the roof, it would be our witness. No one spoke. The quiet settled in like an old friend. Only the sound of rain filled the space between them. It wasn't just rain now. It was rhythm, memory, breath. June tilted her head. Did it always rain when something important happened? Elsie nodded. Almost always. The day your mama was born, it rained. The day she left for college, it rained. And the day Thomas passed, it rained so softly, I thought maybe the clouds were crying for me. Her voice didn't crack. It didn't need to. The weight of love was already there. June reached out and gently touched her grandmother's hand. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Inside the house, the clock chimed 7. The smell of cinnamon cookies still lingered from earlier, when Marin had baked without a recipe, just memory and feel. Outside, the fireflies had begun to glow. Tiny blinking lights, like stars learning how to dance. Their movements slow and kind, as if they too knew bedtime was near. Marin sighed. I used to fall asleep to this sound. When I was little, when I was scared, I'd lie by the front window and just listen. Elsie smiled. You'd ask me if the rain was talking, and I'd say, it's just saying good night. Marin laughed softly, the kind of laugh you let out through your nose. I still believe that. The rain grew a little steadier, still gentle, still kind. Gran, June whispered, do you think the roof remembers all the stories? Elsie turned to her, her voice just above a hush. I do. Some roofs aren't just roofs. They're keepers. They hold laughter and tears and all the quiet moments in between. She rocked slowly. This one, it's held every version of me. Her eyes were distant, but warm. The girl who painted the walls at midnight. The wife who danced barefoot on rainy nights. The mother who waited by the door. And now, the grandmother who listens to the rain with her daughter and her granddaughter beside her. She looked around the porch, at the chipped paint, the blanket tucked under Marin's feet, the teacup that never matched anything else. All of it, part of the story. The wind turned cooler. June pulled the quilt around her shoulders. Marin tucked her feet underneath her. Elsie leaned back and sighed, slow and full. No one spoke. There was no need. The rain filled the silence. 3 generations, rocking gently, breathing slow, wrapped in the same sound. Not just the rhythm of blood, but the rhythm of memory. Love, held softly, like a cup of something warm between your hands. Inside, a lamp flickered on. Outside, the porch creaked with every sway. The night grew deeper, but not darker. The rain, it stayed, just like it always had. And as the roof listened and the night deepened, the house just breathed, softly, warmly, like a hush, rocking them all to sleep, like the ending of a lullaby that hadn't really ended at all. By morning, the rain hadn't stopped. It had only grown quieter, more thoughtful, like it was remembering something too. The sky stayed gray, as if it was still holding back stories, one drop at a time. Inside the kitchen, the soft glow of a single lamp painted the wooden cabinets in warm honey tones. The floor creaked under slow footsteps, and the scent of oats and cinnamon drifted gently through the air. Marin stood by the stove, stirring slowly. She wasn't thinking about breakfast. Not really. Her thoughts were elsewhere, in a year-long past, in a moment that could have changed everything. June padded in, barefoot, still wrapped in her blanket. Her hair was a gentle mess, and her voice came out like a yawn. "Morning." Marin turned, smiling. "Hey, sweetheart. Did the rain keep you up?" June shook her head. "I like it. It makes everything sound softer, like the world's being gentle." They sat down at the table together. Elsie joined them moments later, her steps slow but steady, her robe swishing quietly around her ankles. They didn't talk much, just the clink of a spoon in a bowl, the steady drip of the rain outside, and the hush that comes with old wood and early hours. Then Marin looked over at June, and her voice dropped to something softer than usual. "There was a night. I almost left this house for good." June blinked. "You did?" Elsie paused with her teacup midair. Her eyes didn't leave the window, but she nodded. "Once. Slowly." Marin took a breath, the kind that pulls up something long buried. "I was 19, restless. I thought everything important was somewhere else. I had a suitcase by the door, the blue one with the broken zipper. I fixed it with a safety pin and packed it with more hope than sense." June listened, her spoon stilled. "It was raining that night, too. A soft, steady rain. Not unlike this. The kind that makes you think a little deeper." Marin looked toward the hallway. "I stood right there, just past the stairs. My hand was on the doorknob. I didn't leave a note. I didn't want to hear reasons to stay. I just wanted to go." Elsie added quietly, "And then the power went out." Marin smiled gently, remembering. "Everything went dark, and I froze. I wasn't scared, but I wasn't sure anymore either." She set her spoon down. "And then you came downstairs, Mama, with that old oil lamp, the one we still keep by the fireplace." Elsie chuckled under her breath. "You looked like you were about to disappear into the shadows." "I felt like it," Marin said. But Elsie hadn't scolded her. She hadn't asked questions. She'd simply sat on the staircase, set the lamp beside her, and said, "It's a good night for rain. Nothing else. No lecture, no demands." "I sat beside her," Marin said. "We didn't talk. We didn't need to. We just listened. To the rain on the roof. To our own breathing. To the quiet way the world sometimes speaks." June whispered, "And you stayed." Marin nodded. "I stayed. And I kept staying." Outside, the wind moved gently through the trees. The sound of the rain on the roof felt louder somehow, as if it remembered that night too. "Did you still want to leave after that?" June asked. Marin paused. "For a while, yes. But something changed that night. I realized I wasn't really running towards something. I was running away. And sometimes it takes the dark and the rain to help you see what really matters." Elsie reached across the table and gently placed her hand over Marin's. "You knew where you belonged. You just needed the night to remind you." There was quiet again. The good kind. The kind that fills the room with more meaning than words ever could. That evening, the three of them returned to the porch. The rain had not gone. It was still falling, soft even, true. They each had their own blanket now. June's was green with little stitched clouds. Marin's was faded rose. Elsie's was a deep blue, almost the same shade as the old sky just before night. They didn't talk about the story again. They didn't need to. The porch held it now. The house held it. And the rain, as always, stayed. The third day of rain brought a hush so deep, even the clocks seemed to slow down, as if the house itself were listening. It was the kind of day when no one rushed, the kind of day for thick socks, slow tea, and memories that rise like steam, warm, quiet, and full of scent. The windows wore tiny beads of water like jewelry, and the light that filtered through was soft and silvered, like moonlight pretending to be morning. Elsie sat by the window in her armchair, knitting something that might one day become a scarf, or a blanket, or just a comforting square of wool with no real purpose but peace. Her needles moved slowly, rhythmically, in tune with the rain. Marin was curled up on the couch, a novel resting unread on her chest, eyes half closed, fingers playing absent-mindedly with the edge of the quilt draped across her knees. Every so often, she'd let out a long sigh, not from sadness, but from sinking deeper into stillness. And June, curious June, had disappeared into the attic. She had asked first, of course, always polite, and Elsie had waved her on with a soft smile and a warning, "Mind your head on the beams, love. And if the dust sneezes, bless it, and keep looking." The attic was a place where silence gathered. Not an empty silence, but one filled with the stories of things left behind. A silence that hummed. June's small feet made soft creaks across the old boards. She paused often, not to rest, but to listen. To the sound of rain above her, gently drumming on the roof. To the occasional whisper of wind against the eaves. And to the hush that lives where old things sleep. There were trunks and boxes, frames wrapped in cloth, worn toys resting in corners as if mid-dream. One doll sat upright on a shelf, its eyes faded, a bow still tied in its brittle hair. But it was the small wooden box in the corner that called to her, not loudly, but clearly, like a tap on the shoulder from the past. She knelt slowly and brushed away a bit of dust, revealing wood soft with age. The box had no label, no lock, just a loop of twine keeping it closed. She loosened it carefully, as if she were unwrapping something sacred. The scent that rose up was gentle, aged paper, a hint of lavender, and something else. The smell of home, somehow held inside folded paper. Inside were letters, dozens of them, tied in bundles. Some curled at the edges, some still crisply folded. June's fingers trembled just a little as she reached for one. "My dearest Elsie." She read it quietly, once to herself, then again, aloud, as if the attic walls might want to remember too. They were love letters, each one a small window into a world that had existed long before she was born. Some were funny. One started with, "If this chicken coop doesn't stop leaking, I'm moving in with the cows. They seem to know how to handle bad weather better than me." Some were thoughtful. I saw a woman at the market today with your exact laugh. It made me turn around and smile. And some were poetry, not the kind written in books, but the kind that pours out when someone loves without needing to impress. June read and read. Time felt suspended. The rain fell like a song just for her. Downstairs, the sound of her voice reached Elsie's ears. She stopped knitting, not to listen closely, but to feel it, to feel her husband's words return through their granddaughter's mouth. Marin opened her eyes slowly, blinking into the soft light. She looked toward the ceiling and smiled. She found them, didn't she? Elsie nodded. She did, and they found her. In the attic, June sat surrounded by the letters now. Some on her lap, some fanned out like petals around her. Her heart swelled, her chest warm with the feeling of something too big to name. She folded one carefully and held it to her chest. She didn't yet know what love would feel like when she grew up, but she hoped it would sound like this. Later that evening, as the rain continued, they gathered in the living room. Elsie in her chair, her legs tucked beneath a thick wool blanket. Marin sat cross-legged on the couch, a mug of tea cooling in her hands. June sat on the rug, the letterbox by her side, and the fireplace glowing gently behind her. She read them aloud. Not quickly, not all at once, just one at a time. Each letter was a moment, each pause a breath. The room became a place outside of time. One letter read, "Sometimes I wish the rain would come just so we could stay inside and talk all day. Not about anything, just everything." Another said, "The way you close your eyes when you laugh. I hope I never forget that." Elsie's eyes were closed again now, not asleep, just holding the words close. Marin stared into the flames, her smile soft, her heart drifting between then and now. And June, she looked up at her grandmother. "Gran, he really loved you, didn't he?" Elsie opened her eyes, slowly, like the opening of a curtain to a favorite view. "He still does, every time it rains." The wind picked up gently. Outside, the rain shifted from steady to slow again. Not leaving, just resting. Inside, no one spoke. There was nothing left to say, and everything left to feel. The letters remained on the table, the box nearby, and the warmth they carried drifted through the room like a second fire. The house seemed to exhale, soft and deep, and the rain, as always, stayed. The rain had become a rhythm by now, a language everyone in the house had learned to understand without speaking a word. By the fourth evening, it no longer felt like weather. It felt like a season, a pause, a long breath shared by the house and everyone inside it. That day, cousins arrived, not with much notice, just with bags over shoulders, umbrellas still dripping, cheeks flushed from the walk from the bus stop. First came Caroline, Elsie's niece, with her two boys, Ethan and Ben. Then came Marin's younger brother Daniel, with his old guitar slung across his back and a duffel bag of rain-damp clothes. And finally, Elsie's great-nephew Liam, whose laugh arrived before he did. The porch, once quiet, filled with voices. Wet boots lined against the wall. Quilts spread over laps. Extra mugs of tea passed from hand to hand. The chairs creaked more with the added weight of stories, and the house, oh, the house seemed to grow bigger just to hold them all. They sat wrapped in patchwork quilts, some worn with time, some new enough to still carry the scent of the cedar chest. June sat on the steps, her arms wrapped around her knees. She watched as the rain slid down the porch, railing in thin, glittering streams. Ethan and Ben played a quiet game with raindrops, tracing them with fingers and naming the fastest ones. Daniel strummed his guitar, soft chords, nothing with words, just music that drifted into the night like wood smoke. Caroline told stories, not loud ones, just the kind meant to be shared when it's raining. Stories about childhood mischief, about the time she and Marin climbed the barn roof and got stuck, until Elsie came out and called, "If you can climb it, you can climb down." They'd laughed then, and laughed even harder now. Even Elsie chuckled. I knew they'd get down eventually. They just needed motivation. The porch swelled with warmth, though the rain hadn't stopped. Inside, a casserole warmed in the oven. The windows fogged up from the heat of too many people, and not a single person minded. Later, as night settled, someone lit candles on the porch, just small ones, but the glow they cast made everyone's face look softer, like the rain had polished their memories and left behind the best parts. June leaned into her mother. Is it always like this when everyone comes home? Marin nodded. Sometimes better, sometimes louder, but always like this. Ben asked, why do people come back when it rains? No one answered right away. Then Elsie spoke, her voice steady and warm. Because rain makes us remember. And this porch, it holds every version of us. So we come back to meet ourselves again. Daniel nodded slowly, strumming again. Like echoes. Ethan whispered, or like a lullaby we forgot, but remember when we hear it. Elsie looked around at all of them. The soft candlelight, the quilts, the steam rising from mugs, the sound of rain keeping time. This porch has heard every laugh we've ever shared, and every cry we thought no one heard. It's where your grandfather used to read the paper, where your aunt learned to ride a tricycle, where I sat waiting when your mother came home from her first date. She paused, eyes bright, voice calm. It's not just a porch. It's a chapter of our story. Later, June sat with Liam and asked him about his travels. He told her about the mountains he'd hiked, the people he met, the night he slept under a sky so clear he felt he could fall upward. But, he said, none of it felt quite like this. He looked around. This porch, the sound of this rain, it's like it was waiting for me. June understood. It was. Ben brought out an old board game from the hall closet. They played until the pieces slid from their damp fingers, until the laughter got louder than the rain. And when the game ended, no one really cared who won. The night grew deep. The fireflies came back, dancing just beyond the porch rail. The candles melted low, and one by one, they grew quiet. No one asked for bedtime stories, but stories arrived anyway, carried by glances, by touches, by silence filled with meaning. Elsie sat with her eyes closed, not sleeping, just listening. The rain had shifted again, softer now, like a whisper just before sleep. Marin tucked a blanket around June's shoulders. Daniel set his guitar aside. Caroline rested her head back against the railing, eyes skyward. Elsie opened her eyes and looked at them all. "When I'm gone, keep coming back here," she said. "Don't wait for the rain. But if it does come, listen closely. You'll hear us." No one cried. They didn't need to. The porch held them, just as it always had. The house sighed. The rain listened. And the night folded them all in, gently, quietly, like pages turned in a book well loved and never truly closed. The rain stopped sometime just before dawn, but the world didn't rush to wake. The silence that followed was not empty. It was full, like the hush in a theater just before the curtain rises. A faint breeze crept in through the open window, carrying with it the scent of wet leaves, turned earth, and something lighter. The promise of light, perhaps. The tin roof no longer sang, but the echo of its lullaby lingered. In the corners of the rooms, in the folds of the blankets, in the hearts of those who had listened night after night. June was the first to stir. She blinked into the soft morning glow, the quilt still draped over her shoulder, its edge warm beneath her cheek. The house felt different, not because the rain had stopped, but because something else had arrived. Stillness. She slipped out of bed and tiptoed down the hallway, every wooden board creaking in familiar complaint. The kitchen smelled of something simple, toast, maybe, or warmed milk, the kind of breakfast that didn't need words. Elsie sat at the table, a cup of tea in her hands, staring out the window as though waiting for the sky to tell her something. June padded over and sat beside her. "It's quiet." Elsie smiled. "It is, but not empty. There's still something in the air, like the house is remembering." June nodded. "It feels like the rain is still here, just invisible." They sipped tea together, not talking much, letting the silence stretch like a soft ribbon between them. The rest of the family woke slowly. Daniel wandered in with sleep in his eyes and hair pointing in too many directions. Marin followed soon after, her sweater half on, her voice still thick with dreams. Ben and Ethan clomped down the stairs like a storm of their own, but even they spoke softer that morning, as if the world had asked them to be gentle for just a little while longer. Breakfast was slow. Toast, eggs, a bowl of oranges. The kitchen filled with the small sounds of togetherness, clinks of forks, soft laughter, someone humming the tune Daniel had played the night before. Outside, the world was washed clean. Puddles dotted the garden path. The grass looked greener than it had in months. Even the birds seemed to sing more clearly, as if rain had polished their voices. Later, June and Elsie walked the path behind the house. The air was fresh, the sun still shy behind soft clouds. Everything glistened. The flowers bent slightly under the weight of water droplets, and spiderwebs stretched between branches, sparkling like silver thread. "The world always looks different after the rain," Elsie said. "Not just clean, but honest." like it isn't pretending anymore. June reached out to touch a leaf, still wet with dew. It feels softer. They reached the old bench beneath the willow tree and sat down. The wood was damp, but they didn't mind. The air smelled of everything growing. "Did you ever think the rain would last forever?" June asked. Elsie nodded slowly. "Sometimes, when I was younger, I'd sit on that porch and wonder if it would ever stop. But it always did, and something new always followed." June looked up. "Like today." Elsie smiled. "Exactly." Back inside, the cousins were packing. Caroline folded clothes. Daniel zipped up his bag. Liam scribbled something in a notebook he kept tucked in his jacket. No one said much, but every now and then someone would pause, hand resting on a door frame, eyes lingering on the quilt across the back of the couch, the chipped mug on the counter, the worn spot on the porch where the rocking chair creaked. They didn't want to leave. Not really. But leaving didn't mean forgetting. Before they left, each person stood on the porch one more time. Ben ran his fingers along the rail. Ethan looked up at the roof. Daniel plucked one final note from his guitar, letting it ring out into the fresh morning air. Caroline hugged Elsie tightly. "Thank you for letting us belong here." Elsie whispered back, "You always did." After they left, the house felt bigger again. Not emptier, just fuller in a quieter way. Marin and June cleaned up together. They folded quilts, stacked books, picked up game pieces that had rolled under the chairs. Then they opened all the windows. The breeze swept through, stirring curtains, lifting pages, carrying the scent of lemon from the freshly mopped floor. It felt like turning a page, not to leave a chapter behind, but to keep reading. That evening, June stood on the porch alone. The sun was setting, and the clouds glowed pink and gold. She looked out at the trees, the path, the yard where her memories now lived like friendly ghosts. She reached into her pocket and pulled out one of the letters from the attic. She unfolded it slowly and read aloud, even though no one was listening. Or maybe everyone was. "My dearest Elsie, if it's raining when you read this, just know I'm with you. Every drop, every puddle, every hush that falls between us. That's me, saying I love you." June folded it again and held it to her heart. The stars began to appear. 1, then 3, then a dozen. The sky was clear and still. She could hear the rain, not falling from the clouds, but rising from her memory. Inside the house, the lamps glowed warm. Elsie sat with her eyes closed in her chair. Marin brought in a basket of folded clothes. The house was alive in the softest ways. June stepped back inside, her bare feet padding softly across the wood. She paused by the door and whispered, "Good night," and somewhere, in the corners of the roof, in the warmth of the walls, in the hush between moments, the rain whispered back, "Good night."
Thank you for spending your time with us, calmly under the rain-soaked roof. If this story touched your heart, consider giving it a gentle thumbs up. It helps others find their way to stories that feel like home. Share it with someone you love, someone who might be missing a porch, a letter, or a quiet rain. And if you haven't already, we'd be honored to have you subscribe for more cozy tales from Story Planet. Good night and sweet dreams from all of us at Story Planet.